Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Dog Trainer Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing what it takes to grow your dog training business, whether you're just starting out and feeling stuck in solopreneur mode, or if you're actively working to grow your business beyond just yourself. This episode is packed with insights on mindset, marketing, and sustainable growth. And who better to help us navigate this topic than Andre Yu? Andre is the founder of Windhounds Fly, one of the most recognized dog training businesses in Canada, and he is also a faculty member at the Karen Pryor Academy. Over the last 15 years, Andre has managed to grow Windhounds Fly to a thriving business with a full staff and multiple locations throughout Canada. So welcome, Andre. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Josh, it's always a pleasure to be here and chat with you.
Yeah, so I was very excited to get you on the podcast today, and we have a lot to go over, definitely. For those that don't know you, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself and Windhounds Fly?
For sure. I started Windhounds Fly in 2010 as an experiment. I was curious to know whether a dog training business could be viable and whether I could make a living from it. Fast forward 15 years later, Windhounds Fly has 5 locations. We've got a team of over 20 employees, and we currently do close to $1 million in revenue per year. And we're doing well and we're looking to grow, and I'm still excited to get to work every single day.
Very cool. Yeah, that's quite a track record. So you started your business by yourself and now operate, as you said, a full team with multiple locations. Can you give us a quick snapshot of what it looks like today?
Yeah, right now we strictly operate in Toronto, although we do have a nascent and growing online business as well. The majority of our business is split between group classes at 5 physical locations across the greater Toronto area, and also private one-on-one lessons that we either do at our facilities or in the neighborhood surrounding those locations. So that's the types of services we do. In terms of what our team is comprised of, approximately half of our team are dog training instructors and behavior consultants. So they're responsible for delivering group classes, seeing people for one-on-one lessons, and their main focus is just to do great work in terms of behavior consulting and training and instruction. The other half of the team, for which I would say that I'm actually more a part of, is really in the operations and back end side of the business. My role is primarily being the visionary for the company. I'm also responsible for the marketing part of our organization, and my job is to make sure to pay attention to what 1 year looks like, 3 years look like. What does the future of our business, what does the future of dog training look like? I have a general manager who is effectively my chief operating officer, and she owns the day to day. So I often joke that I don't know much about who's teaching where tonight and which location is busiest. So I'm very fortunate to have her as my second in command. And then we've got a client experience team that responds to customer inquiries. And also we have a role that is responsible for answering admissions inquiries so we can help people who are not sure what service makes sense, get guidance regarding how we can help them best.
Very cool. Very cool. That's so important to have a vision overall in your business and then having people help you too. So that's super cool. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
So then tell me a bit about what inspired you to start Windhounds Fly in the first place.
So I was a pet dog owner very late in life. I got my first dog at the age of 26 or 27, and we became consumers of dog training services. And although it's not really an area we need to go deep in today, I did pet dog classes. My dog developed after the honeymoon period in adoption, a series of behavior issues. So I became a consumer of pet dog group classes, one-on-one behavior consultations, and the like. And what I found was even in the late 00s, in Canada's largest city, a lot of the ways that dog training businesses ran at the time were very cottage industry, meaning it was a lot of paper-based forms. There were no online options for signing up for classes. My handouts were handed to me on a stack of photocopied paper with staples in the corner. So I wondered if someone actually applied best practices for running an efficient company and put it into an industry like dog training, for which dog training services are needed by everyone, what would that look like? So it was as much curiosity from a business perspective, but also mission driven as well, because I felt that if a company ran a dog training business or behavior consulting business better, we could help more dogs and deliver a higher quality of service in terms of group classes, behavior consults. And that means dogs and people that are happier in the end.
Totally. So I'm hearing there's two parts to that. One being able to do better than is currently around and seeing if this will stick. And then also from a place of helping your community a bit more. So if you can get in front of more dog owners, give them, the client onboarding and whatnot, being able to help their dogs, keeping them out of shelters, all of those sorts of things.
Exactly.
Totally. Okay, cool. So then what was your initial vision or goal in mind? And then how has that kind of morphed over the years?
I'll be honest, for the first 10 years of the business, I didn't really have a vision. I didn't have a business plan. I had no specific place I wanted to go. So it took a while for me to actually create my first 3-year or 5-year plan and strive for it. So I would say that in the first 10 years, there were a series of questions I wanted to answer. The first question, is this even viable? Is this always going to be a hobby business? But I answered that within the first couple of years that yes, I can actually pay myself enough to survive and even thrive as an individual owner operator. And then the next question was, is this a business that could actually employ people and pay them a living wage or better so that they could actually make a career out of dog training as an employee for a company? I wanted to know if that could be done. And at around year 5, I answered that question yes. And that's when I brought in my first, second, third full-time employees. It wasn't until about 2019, just before the COVID pandemic, the idea that this could be even much bigger and I should set some goal in the distance that I should strive for and work backwards to achieve. Those sorts of ideas didn't happen until then. But the question that was introduced to me in 2019 was, can a dog training business like ours become a 7-figure business? Totally arbitrary number, but the question was posed. And at the time I said, seems impossible, but let's try. So that actually was what prompted me to pursue that and roll out a series of plans quarter by quarter, year by year to see if that could happen. And we did it.
Very cool. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I can't say I know of any other dog trainers that have been able to accomplish that. So kudos. Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah. Okay. And so it sounds like the first decade, it was just turning it into a viable business and seeing where it can go. And over the last 5 years or so, you've been focusing on like actually creating a 3-year, 5-year, a vision for what this will turn into, and then creating a plan for that.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay. So then looking back, if we look back to 2010 and go back to the very beginning, what would you focus more on or less on to grow your business overall?
Oh, there's so many things that I would do differently if I could go back to 2010. If I could have spoken to the younger version of me and given some advice, so much. But if I were to limit it to one, I think that the number one thing that I should have done earlier was invest more in deliberate sales and marketing. Our growth for the first 10 years was purely because we were awesome at what we did. People found us, loved the service, and told all their friends, family, and veterinarian. So we grew mostly through word of mouth. That isn't to say we didn't do any marketing, but there's just so many more activities that I know about now that if we had applied from day one, it would have supercharged our growth. And I often wonder, would it have been like 15 years from 2010 if I had actually really poured gasoline on the sales and marketing fire in 2010? That is, I think, the number one thing that I would have done differently.
Totally. Yeah. So I kind of see you got your services down and your customer service down. And if you're even doing those things, you can definitely create a viable business, no problem. But being able to then kind of supercharge those things and actually get out further, then that could have grown exponentially more. What are some of those marketing activities or sales activities that you think you would have liked to focus on more?
I think that setting a budget for advertising and marketing, something that I didn't do till much later. I strictly did things. And of course, when you first start, budget is always tight, right? So you want to conserve cash flow because you got to pay yourself first, right? In the early days, you may not make enough to even just pay yourself. So the thought of even spending $100 a month on advertising when you're not sure if you'll pay yourself 200, 500, these seem like very scary things. But what I do understand now is if you spend $100, but it produces $101 back in gross profit, you should do that every day of the week over and over and over again. And to know that is then to answer the question, how do you calculate whether advertising investment produces a return or return on ad spend? That's really what I know now that I didn't know back then. So if I knew that, then even in day one, if it was spending $10 on ads, which
Mhm.
can be done many different ways, of course, there's so many channels and places to spend money. If I had a way to know that $10 gave me back $11 in gross profit, then I would have felt really comfortable in doing that. But because I didn't, I was very gun shy, or the thought of, oh, ads are too expensive. That's not for us. And that's really the number one thing that I would do differently.
Totally. And just imagine if you did kind of start back then, and if you're wasting $5 a day to get information as far as what works, what's not working, just imagine the information you'd have been able to get over the last 10, 15 years to actually teach yourself. And so when you are at this level now, you can be that much more lean in your marketing as well.
Yeah, I only focused on like free marketing. And what is free? Making sure your website has good content so it ranks organically with search engine marketing. In 2010, Google is a very different place. So for a very long time, just being number one in the local search could be accomplished through organic strategy versus paid. So we were able to coast on that for a long time. But what if I had spent money on Google ads on day one? What if I'd spent money on Instagram or Facebook ads earlier on, back in the mid-teens, like 2015, 2016? What if? That's a question I retrospectively always ask myself.
Totally, totally. Yeah, and that kind of goes to, that There's time investment and there's money investment. And so it sounds like you invested a lot of your time back then, which is still time is money. I think that's an important lesson as well. If you don't have a lot of money to start with, maybe you're investing more of your time. But if you do have some money to invest in your business, that can even make your time more efficient, whether you are maybe hiring someone to help you or just putting fuel on the fire with advertising and whatnot too.
Yeah, and to sort of like dovetail off your point, that's probably going to be my second regret, and that bringing on experts that know more than you from day one is worth it. And my attitudes have changed a lot from the early days to now, in that I used to pride myself as being someone that was a jack of all trades and could do everything in the company. I could fix a toilet to save money on calling in a plumber. I could create my own website using WordPress and design it myself. I could do everything myself. And time becomes a limiting factor. And it's not a waste of money, it's an investment in spending money on outside experts. As long as you have a way to verify that the dollar you put in is going to give you a dollar or more of benefit coming out, and understanding how to figure that out is really key. And if you have that from day one, you shouldn't be afraid to invest in your company.
Totally. And I always say you want to be dangerous enough to understand what is going on and whatnot. But if we can pay someone else that can do it in half the time, we can do it while giving us twice the return on investment. Why don't we do that? And then you're able to then spend your time on the things where you are the expert and you can invest that time more wisely to get even more of a return.
100%.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. And so then what were some early missteps or experiments that didn't work out that but taught you a valuable lesson in growing your business?
So, one of the earliest missteps was actually opening our second location that was not great, and I closed within 2 years. And the lesson I learned from that was to not compromise when it comes to brick and mortar locations, because location really is everything. And in the case of me getting that second location, I had success in the first one. So at the time I was very hungry to like, oh, if I can land and expand into a new neighborhood, I could double again and recreate that same magic. And the magic of the people were there because I would go up there, and like other instructors in my very small team in the early days would go up there. So the instructional quality was the same, but the layout and the space and the square footage and just the configuration of the space was a real compromise. And in the end, it affected the experience for our students, and also the instructors did feel proud to teach in this place that was a compromise versus our first location. So after 2 years of trying and then being mad about it, we chose not to renew the lease and then we left, which then, of course, is a waste of time in terms of building market awareness of this location that no longer exists. And of course, capital too, because even in the early days with modest locations, capital is required to get that set up. But when I go back to it, like I don't beat myself up over mistakes, because I really feel that becoming an entrepreneur is really about testing over and over again. And anytime you can test something and then verify that it didn't work, you've learned valuable lessons which make you a greater entrepreneur. And most successful entrepreneurs have failed more times than average people have even gone up to bat. And that's also why business consulting, if you can get it from someone who's really knowledgeable and has been in the trenches, is incredibly priceless, because that advice I just gave could save someone $50,000 of wasted time opening a location that was rushed. So if anyone's out there like getting antsy about opening a second location, my advice to you is don't compromise. Know what your requirements are for that really good classroom experience, because you don't want to find out 2 years in that you set this place up in the wrong spot and it sucks.
So we're thinking like spatially, like maybe too small of space, like per dog and owner, feeling cramped. Would you say those are the things?
Yeah, we compromised on the square footage, and then there were some sightline issues in terms of where the students would be placed vis-a-vis where the instructor could be. But after that experiment, like then I knew like we would only ever set up in places that had this minimum square footage requirement. So that each dog team would have 200 square foot each. And that's a rule of thumb that I know now. So I can evaluate a new space and know within 10 seconds whether it's going to be a good fit or not. The other is rectangle shaped, and it can't be like L shaped or other, like
Okay.
there's a golden ratio for a dog training classroom. And if it starts deviating right away, and then things like accessibility for the students is important. We often have to be in basements or second floors due to the cost of real estate, but even the experience of going downstairs or upstairs, like you really need to think about little things like that. So, I learned from that first place, and which helped because then when it was time to get our new second place, it was a
Mhm.
perfect rectangle. And we were in that spot for, 7 or 8 years. And we would still be there had it not been for the fact that the building got expropriated by a public transit authority. It's being turned into a new subway station. But I learned the lesson. Don't go for weird, janky L shapes, rectangle. found the rectangle, perfect spot. And then the third location, rectangle, was very successful. Fourth location, rectangle. There's an example of not beating oneself up over early missteps, but for sure, compromising on that second location was one of the earliest missteps I made.
And I kind of think of that as if someone were just to be like a dog trainer that maybe isn't teaching classes, doesn't have a location, we're thinking about client experience here, really. So we don't want to compromise on the experience that we're giving our clients, whether it is showing up at our facility, or maybe it could even be like onboarding kind of things that we do with our clients too.
Absolutely. Like well-designed businesses that are really successful, think about what it's like from the moment a client first hears about us to when they set foot into the door or that first lesson to even the post-service experience and then the second and third lesson or service that is sold. So focusing on client experience is really important.
Totally. Okay. And so that kind of speaks to you've invested a lot in your team as far as having a client experience team, it sounds, and administrative staff. How much would you say that has affected your business over the year? Have there been any experiences to where you thought, oh my gosh, we have to have someone in this role to be successful?
So in the early days, when I hired my first full-time employee and my second full-time employee, and when I was an owner operator, you end up doing everything, right? And I think most smaller dog training businesses that are owner operator, two employees, you end up seeing clients at night on the weekends, and during the day, you are basically answering emails and phones and texts, and you are that client experience person. And that's how we started. But as we got bigger, it definitely made sense to just like, optimize your labor, right? Optimize who does what and delineate roles and specialize. And there's no doubt that a dog trainer is better off out there seeing clients, teaching lessons where they're billable at a certain rate versus being at a desk answering emails. It's very hard to find qualified dog trainers that are certified, train the way we do, are reliable, have the right core value fit. Like those are unicorns. But it is much easier in terms of the job market and candidates to find people who are excellent customer service reps that just need to know a little bit about dog training and follow standardized procedures and plug into that role and be very successful. That's my main advice. Like as soon as you can separate yourself from customer service, client experience, administrative tasks, like bringing on somebody that does that for you is super liberating and just makes sense from an optimizing your profit perspective.
Totally. And so even a VA or anything like that, or even thinking about, are there systems that could potentially be automated in your business too, to take away some of that admin time? That's great. And I also think about like the business roller coaster, as I like to call it, where you're busy marketing initially to bring in clients, then you start getting the clients and you stop marketing so much. And so things start to go down and we keep having this kind of business roller coaster. I know I felt that when I was a dog trainer as well. So
Yeah, and if I can add to your point, I joke with younger people that I talk to, dog trainers that I talk to. I was recently at Clicker Expo and I talked to a lot of people that are following my footsteps, new to the industry. And I joke to them that don't necessarily look at the way I did it as the way that you should do it in 2025. In some respects, my business is a boomer business. And I know I'm a Gen Xer, but Gen Xers just disappeared. You're either a millennial or you're a boomer now. So I'm a
right.
boomer.
And
My business is a boomer business and leveraging AI, leveraging automation, leveraging all these tools. Like it is like when I say bring on people to help you with these tasks, that's boomer talk. It can also be bring on technology that automates these tasks. And then you hear about stories of these brilliant Gen Zs and millennials that have built massive companies that have two employees. That is so fascinating and so exciting to me as someone who basically runs a boomer business. And this conversation has reminded me looking into the latest generation of AI agents and automation to streamline what my employees and client experience and our admissions team do. That is something I should prioritize this year for sure. Because I know it's out there. I've seen glimmers of it. I've had people tell me about it. And I haven't prioritized investigating that. And I definitely want to do that because boomer businesses need to become Gen Z businesses if they're going to be here in 10 years, in 20 years.
that just frees up the rest of your team even more, right? So if there's repeatable tasks that, they're doing hour after hour, if we could maybe automate some of that, that then lets them focus more on the things that are important to have a human involved.
100%.
Following up with clients, calling them, all of those sorts of things. If they're not bogged down with clicking the buttons and sending the contracts, they're going to be even better off.
That's right.
Totally, totally. Okay. All right. So then what activities or strategies gave you the biggest kind of bang for your buck when it came to bringing in new clients and growing your business?
The number one thing that helped me as an entrepreneur to reach that hockey stick growth that I described that happened at year 10 was the decision for me to step away from delivering dog training, hire and grow my dog training team so that I could then work on the business instead of working in the business.
Totally.
That was absolutely key because it's not possible to see clients for 10, 15, or 20 hours a week and still have enough space to really think strategically and implement like your vision. So once I did that, then I was able to think about things like opening new locations to expand my market reach. I was able to think about things like creating standardized procedures so that when I brought on new team members, the onboarding process would be easier and that the experience that our customers had would be very consistent, regardless of who was delivering what classes where. And then I think that the last thing that was really important from a tactical perspective to grow rapidly was really building an amazing team culture, which I think we still have to this day. So, defining our company's core values, making sure that everyone understood them so that when people in my team are operating out in the field by themselves, they know what the right path is because we've all decided that these are the core values that drive the behaviors we choose to do. So people can make good decisions very autonomously. Those are the three things that I think every entrepreneur needs to decide to do at some point when they hockey stick their growth. Step away from the day to day so you can focus on the vision. Bring in team members that deliver and then create processes and culture that allow it to scale.
Totally. Okay. And so if you were a dog trainer starting out today, so it's 2025, you just went through KPA, for example, and you're starting your dog training business, what steps do you think you would take to start that process that you just described?
First, you're going to start off as an owner operator. So, the first step away from the day to day is to look at everything that you do that can be outsourced, just outsource that right away because you will eventually, if you're good, you will eventually have more clients and more leads and more prospects and more people requesting your services. You have time in the day to deliver. So, why not maximize that first and not spend time doing bookkeeping, not spend time responding to basic inquiries, not spend time even doing a lot of your marketing. A lot of that should be outsourced. Just get that off your plate using fractional help or AI or other automation tools so that you can spend most of your time seeing clients and billing, which then allows you to actually make enough money that there's money left over and that you've got excess leads, you've got a wait list. And then you have an opportunity to make some decisions. Right. I chose to reduce the amount of time I saw clients to then step into a leadership role that was really managerial. That may not be the path that everyone needs to take. It may make sense at that point to bring in someone who takes over that business side of your operation and is the person that takes care of things like hiring and growth. And then you get to continue being the dog training and dog behavior expert that delivers services. But that person that's on your payroll is the business person in your organization that helps bring on the second trainer and the third trainer and the fourth trainer. That's really my main suggestion. Get to the point where you are so busy, you've got a wait list, and that you're charging enough and making enough that there's money left over so that you have options as to where to go. It's very hard to do things, and options are very limited when you just don't have excess profit left over to then invest back in your business.
Yeah, so it sounds like we want to audit our time, determining maybe keeping track of our calendar and seeing, okay, these hours of the day I've been working on admin, these hours I've been working on responding to inquiries, these hours I'm working on marketing, etc. Finding those things that maybe suck a little bit more to us or we feel like we're maybe not good at and then seeing how we can outsource that, whether it is through technology or maybe hiring a CPA. That was my first kind of expenditure, just because bookkeeping and all of those sorts of things definitely sucks. No, that's all great. Okay.
Yeah, there's a term for that. It's an exercise that I was taught to do, which is just called love it or loathe it.
Totally.
So time audit, write down everything you do in the next 4 weeks, because 4 weeks then or a month basically gives you an entire cycle. And most businesses, like you got to pay bills every month. Like most things tend to happen in a monthly cycle. If you jot down every single thing you do for the next 30 days, you will likely have a complete picture of all the things that are on your plate. And then just prioritize the ones that you loathe and that you know that you may be good at, but you still loathe because there's stuff that I'm actually talented at doing, but I hate doing it. And that's the stuff you should really prioritize getting human or technology assistance for so that you are purely doing stuff that is in your zone of genius. And ideally, the stuff that's in your zone of genius produces good return on investment for time spent, whether it's seeing clients and then being billable or working on projects that you are actually really excited about that give you energy, but also produce a return on investment for your business.
Totally, totally. Yeah, and I would say even 5-minute little tasks, every little thing that you're doing, you want to write down and get a sense of how much time you're actually spending on it. Because even something that's taking 15 minutes, 30 minutes, for example, if we look at that over a full year, that's probably going to be a couple of weeks worth of work, 40, 80 hours worth of work in just sending contracts, for example.
100%.
Yeah. So finding those things that are easier to replace than you, right? So you can't necessarily bring on another dog trainer very easily and get them to train to your standards and whatnot. But could we find a piece of technology to send our contracts, or can we find like a front of office person to respond to our inquiries? Those things are a little bit easier to replace.
For sure. And in 2010, the term virtual assistant didn't even exist. So going back to us being a boomer business, but now our company does have one full-time overseas team member who we value incredibly. But bringing them on to help with our operations, to help my general manager like have more space to think strategically, totally worth it. And as you said, the technology that's out there these days for automating so many tasks, it's accessible, it's affordable, and it's pretty easy for moderately tech savvy people. Like you don't even have to be like a nerd anymore to get this stuff to work. Like it's a very different space 2025 versus 2010. And that's why I look at Gen Z businesses in awe a lot of the times.
No, totally. Yeah. These kids nowadays, they have it easier than we definitely had it. So that's great. Okay. So switching gears a little bit, what would you say is so as far as marketing goes? So which marketing channels or tactics do you feel are most effective for bringing in dog training clients, both online and offline?
Yeah. As a brick and mortar business with physical locations, our market is limited to a radius by our locations. So I'll speak to a business that is like geographically bound. I still think to this day, making sure that you do well on Google search is still number one. And if someone is like, where do I start? I would almost always say, just start there. And the simple test is dog trainers near me, dog trainer city name, dog trainer town name, whatever that is. Just look and see where you are when an average person in your area searches, and then invest energy to look into how to solve that problem. And like I said earlier, you may not necessarily want to spend the next 6 months going to a search engine marketing optimization like school and learn how to do that yourself. You might be better off just seeing clients. So that's where finding the who or the what that can help you solve that problem. As long as you know how to calculate return on investment, meaning I gave them $5,000, but they for sure made me back $10,000. As long as you have that figured out, and you should just ask them, can you like show me how you're going to produce a return on investment? They should be able to tell you that. You can't go wrong there. So really optimize for Google local search if you are a brick and mortar business. Then I would say secondarily after that, your website has to be really sharp too, because Google search will likely direct people to your website. And if your website is janky and doesn't make any sense, then all that work that person did to build you being high up on the Google rankings is lost. They get to your website and it doesn't make any sense. And again, look for experts. But some of the things that I think make an important website, some of it's technical and some of it is actually not technical. I think the copy is really important. I think copy is actually more important than the technology. I think that if you had a really tech awesome website that loaded fast, was optimized, and had all the stuff and the bells and whistles, but had terrible copy. And then you had a very basic website that was almost like a unmodified template from Wix or whatever, but the copy was on point. Given those two things, the copy website will win. So copywriting has to actually speak to the audience, speak to their pain points, feel like you're talking to them. And when they land on that copy and they read it, they're like, this person's in my head.
Right.
Copywriting is really important. And then, of course, make sure the technology is at least decent so that it's optimized for mobile, loads fast, and all that stuff. So website is next. I think third then is social media. I deprioritize social media for local business, mainly because what I've learned is that social media stopped being social a long time ago. Social media is just media.
Right.
It's just many different people competing for attention. And to actually compete for attention, you basically have to become a media company. And that's a very steep curve to develop that capability and infrastructure and resources to do that. So my tips about social media is just make it decent, right? Just make it so that when someone lands on your website because they found you on Google or someone told so-and-so check this out, they're going to look at your social media just to make sure you're okay. And then if you have social media that's updated regularly, looks professional, and has language that speaks to the person that is investigating you, you're going to be fine. But don't make getting 1 million followers your main goal as a smaller business that's starting up, because it's a bit of a moonshot. It's possible, and you hear about these stories of this backwater like plumbing company in like middle of nowhere USA that makes viral videos and has become famous, but that's almost like winning the lottery. So don't recommend that as being your go-to strategy for success.
Totally. And so it sounds like some traditional things as far as marketing goes are what you'd recommend in people focusing on first? Local search results, having your Google business profile, making sure you're adding your services, photos, those sorts of things. And then if we are putting investment, whether that is time or money into getting that overall kind of exposure really from search engines, then we want to make sure we're not scaring people off when they land on our website. So making sure we're speaking to them, their pain points, all of those sorts of things, and making it easy for them to basically say yes and maybe take a first step as an example.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you call it like traditional because 20 years ago, 10 years ago, like traditional would have meant maybe 20 years ago would have meant like newspaper ads and phone book and getting a booth at the dog festival in the neighborhood. Like that to me is traditional. But I guess in 2025, Google, like SEM and Google business listing has become is traditional. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with you.
No, totally. And word of mouth is still very powerful, whether you're looking at referral sources, whether it's vets or past clients and whatnot. And I would add on to that list as far as search engines looking to get reviews, or if we're able to automate those review requests as an example. Because even if someone is coming to you from word of mouth, they're probably going to be vetting you to some degree, whether that is going to your business profile, looking at what other people have to say, all of those sorts of things.
As it relates to Google search and local Google search, I think that working hard to remind your happy customers to give you that 5-star Google review is definitely an activity worth investing in.
Totally, totally. Okay, that's great. And so then how do you go about measuring success or return on investment on these marketing efforts? Are there any metrics you're looking at specifically or benchmarks that you're watching closely? What does that look like?
Great question. And I feel like we can always do better at this, but I've reached a point where I'm satisfied, so we run with it. Most of our advertising spend involves directing people to landing pages. And in that landing page, we typically have some kind of offer. So a lot of how we attribute, and again, answer that question was spending $1,000 on Google business ads last month worth it? Yes or no? How do I know? Is we just look at the number of people that land on the landing page. We look at the number of people who take us up on that offer for the free ebook or whatever is being offered. And once we have that, we can actually directly attribute jdoe@gmail.com signed up for this class. And then once we have that data, we can then say, yeah, the $1,000 spend on those Google ads directed this many people to the landing pages, of which this many people, and we have their names, actually took up the offer. And these people ended up signing up for this dollar amount of service. And over time, if you know the average lifetime value of a client, you can say that on average, a new client that we acquire will spend this much money over the life of their first dog and they come back for the second. We're old enough that we've got the second dog generation coming. Then you can say with confidence whether that ad spend was worth it. And at least for me, the only benchmark I want is that at least we break even. Because I know that there are a ton of people that look at the landing page, close it, and then come back 3 weeks later through another channel and we lose that attribution. But if I can at least show break even on my ad spend, then I know we can keep doing it over and over again.
No, that's great. Totally. And so would you say you're looking at metrics as far as, so 100 people land on this page, 30% of them are converting. Are you looking at those sorts of things, or are you more so looking at it in terms of, as you mentioned, return on investment, breaking even, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I just look at it on a return on investment. I don't do as much tweaking to be like, oh, if I just change this image, produce a 2% improvement in the click-through rate. I don't go that detailed. I suppose if I had a full-time digital marketing person working on that, they would have the bandwidth to look at that level and they could probably optimize everything to be 20% more efficient for sure. But I'm satisfied with just knowing return on investment
Yeah.
or return on ad spend to just know to keep on going.
Totally, totally. Okay. No, that's great. And even someone that might not be spending money on ads, they might be looking at those sorts of things on their website too. So if they're seeing 100 people land on their website, only one of those 100 people actually turn into anything, then is there something maybe we need to change? If we could just get that percentage up to 2 or 3%, what could that do for our business too? So it's all great. Okay. So then what mindset shifts did you have to make, whether personally or professionally, to scale beyond yourself? Growing a business, starting a business, even if it's just by yourself, is a scary kind of thing to go through, and you're taking a risk on yourself. And then just taking it to another level where you're thinking like, wow, there's people depending on me for their livelihood and whatnot. What kind of mindset shifts do you feel you had to make?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has employees in a team as well, it's so scary when you take on the first, second, and third person's counting on that paycheck. It's such a burden. of responsibility because I take it really seriously when someone decides to join our company and then give up something to come here that we need to now succeed so that they have a stable job and employment. Beyond that, even a career path. And what are they going to do next? And one of my goals has always been to have the company, and I don't always hit it. We don't always hit it. It's been really tough the last few years, but I've always wanted to try to grow the company faster than the people in it so that there'd always be opportunities to advance. But to get back to the mindset shift, I think the first thing is you have to learn to let go of control. And that is the hardest thing and the number one thing that limits people from going beyond an owner operator. And not to disparage owner operators at all. But an owner operator is basically they just still have a job. It's no different than working for someone else. Because if you're an owner operator, you are putting time in and you're getting money out.
Right.
The boss is you, but you're the employee. So it's not that much different than having a job. When you want to go beyond just one, and go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just go beyond. You have to get over the fact that the way you do things is how you do them. And that when you bring other people in, especially when there's a strict standard operating procedure, it must be done this way, then people are going to do things in ways that are different. And at first, the ego will say, that's inefficient, that's dumb, I wouldn't do it that way. But if you just really take a step back and look at it and say, no, that is just as good as mine, it is different. In some cases, it's better. So learning to let go of things is the mindset shift. So some things for me, like letting go of small things about how a group class was taught and be like, you know what, that's not exactly how I do it, but people are just as happy. Maybe they're happy in a different way. Maybe different people find that even better. And it's still within the rails of our SOP, all good. At this point, I don't even have say over what we teach. Like I'm so divorced from the actual training side. Our team has a group called the school board that has meetings to decide, is this the most current way to teach the skill? And they make changes to it that I'm not even aware of. So I've completely let go of that. The next level beyond that was hiring my general manager and basically having to say, look, you are going to do things differently than I do. Go forth. And I've intentionally limited what I can see so that I don't accidentally get back in there and create dumpster fires. But like, why are you doing it this way? Like, just step away. And that is very hard for dog trainers to do because we're very passionate about this is the right way to train stay. This is the right way and the right order to help with the dog reactivity. And if you can't get over that, you really shouldn't try to scale up your business because you're just going to implode. But if you can, that unlocks the opportunity to do some really amazing things.
No, that's awesome. I would 100% agree there, definitely. So being able to let go of things as far as like how you do it in a particular way is super important to be able to grow at all. I know for me, like even how a teammate responds to an email, for example, I could dissect that email and even just them putting a dot instead of an exclamation, for example, on the end of a sentence can certainly get me a little worked up. But being able to know that your way isn't the only way is super important. Yeah, that's great. What would you say to dog trainers who feel stuck in the solopreneur mindset and they want to break free to that next level, whether it is delegating one piece of their business and whatnot? What would you say to them?
It takes time to Rome wasn't built in a day. And a lot of times overnight successes take a long time. And I think that that's not often celebrated or recognized. So I forget the exact example, but Starbucks started in 1974 or it was like, it wasn't until 20 years after the first Starbucks store started opening that they began their trajectory of exponential growth to the coffee behemoth. If you are just starting out, what I've described in terms of what I have may seem impossible, but I just want everyone to know you can win a baseball game just by bunting. It's not all about home runs, right? One base at a time. So just start with that love it or loathe it exercise. Capture in a notebook or some sort of digital document every single type of task you do in the next 30 days. And then just look at the stuff that robs you of energy and then focus on getting rid of one of those things. Ask your peers, do some Googling, look at apps and technology, and just find a way to make that one thing go off. And the beautiful thing about investing energy into that is the more you do that, the more space opens up to think clearly. As things open up and more time becomes available, you get to do more of that. And I think that habit of continuous improvement is what compounds over time. So just bunt and you'd be surprised, like a bunch of singles, and eventually you've won your baseball game.
So get to those low hanging fruit things first. And as you delegate those off, your confidence grows in the ability to delegate. And so it just has this snowball effect as time moves on. So you just took the next question out of my mouth there. So this has been a really productive conversation. Thank you again for taking the time to come on with me today. So where can listeners find out more about you and everything else you have going on?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about our company, Windhounds Fly, the website's windhoundsfly.com, and our social media is always at Windhounds Fly. So we're easy to find. And if you're curious about me, I'm pretty active on social media as well. On most platforms like Instagram, you can find me as at Andre_U.
Awesome. We'll be sure to add those to the show notes. So be sure to go find Andre and give him a follow. He's up to a whole bunch of cool things, whether it is dog training with your dog Mikey or some cool things with Muay Thai and whatnot too. Very cool. Thank you again, Andre, and we'd love to have you on the show again in the near future.
It'd be my pleasure, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.